Mr. Matthew Rojansky, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about 25 years of Moldovan independence. In your opinion, what are the areas where this country progressed and, contrarily, the Moldovan government could have done better?
There are so many people in Moldova who in 25 years have achieved a tremendous amount, right? They have built real lives, educational institutions that were not serious in communist times have become serious. We were talking earlier about media. There are people who are doing serious journalism, which never existed before 1991. There are some real businesses, but when you come to politics, it's more disappointing. It's a country which is losing still every year its best and brightest citizens to the wider world because the opportunities are better. It's a country whose basic sovereignty, the basic idea that there should be this state, has not been consolidated in 25 years. In other words, you ask ordinary Moldovans and you don't get like a clear, compelling answer. Who are we? What do we stand for? Why do we have a country? It does seem like a lack of leadership is a problem, or maybe even too much leadership. Leaders fighting with each other for leadership instead of fighting for some accomplishments. At the end of the day, no one really believes in what they're claiming that they're fighting for. So let's say, we talk about the Alliance for European Integration or any version of this coalition of pro-European forces, which at times has even included the communists, ironically. They say that they're in favor of European values, but actually, if you look at the way that they behave as individuals and as parties, there's almost nothing European in their behavior.
In the last 2 years, do you think Moldova has developed enough of its economic benefits after signing a free trade agreement with the European Union?
We know about agricultural opportunities. We know about skilled labor opportunities like IT outsourcing or even migratory labor, but in a more formal sense, more properly regulated, where Moldovans can be very desirable, guest workers in other European countries. There's no reason why Moldova can't be a center which is defined around something. Like, for example, Moldova could be a major tourism, environmental, and organic agriculture kind of destination. And it seems to me there also is an opportunity. I mean, Moldova has the legacy of the Soviet health and medical system, which is still pretty strong. And so you can supply a lot of, maybe not what you call medical tourism, but medical services at a much lower price, but of a high quality. I mean, there are a lot of things, if you think creatively, there are a lot of things Moldova can offer if it's part of the European marketplace. But no one's going to go there except stag party tourists unless they feel that it's a safe, rule of law, integrated European economy.
Many of the Moldovan products, as we know, such as wine and fruits, have been facing embargoes from the Russian Federation. Do you consider these blockages on the Russian market a big loss for the Moldovan economy?
10 or 15 years ago, Moldova was selling a majority of its output to the Russia and CIS market. That's no longer the case. Now the majority goes to the European market, but that's not because the total has grown. It's because they've lost in their exports to Russia. So, I mean, yes, it's a loss, of course. There's nothing wrong with selling to the Russian market. The counter-argument people might make is, well, it's clear that when you have trade with Russia, Russia uses this trade for political manipulation. If Moldova is fully part of the European economic space, then it automatically gains access to North America. It's really huge. So it can compensate for what it's lost with Russia, but it has lost, for sure.
Does Moldova matter more to European Union or the Russian Federation in terms of geographical, political, and economic interests?
Europe has a lot of problems, a lot of very serious problems, and Moldova is not at the top of the list. So there's a small group of European countries that care about Moldova. They care about them for their own selfish reasons, by the way. Let's not pretend that Romania's concern for Moldova is totally altruistic. That Romania cares about Moldova for reasons of kind of historical, cultural, territorial claims. East European, Baltic countries, which care about Moldova primarily so that they can stick it to Russia, right? So make Moldova part of the European Union, maybe part of NATO, and yeah, we can really screw the Russians. And that's the problem that Moldova always has, is, you know, being someone else's instrument, right? Always being instrumentalized by others. Russia doesn't care that much about Moldova as Moldova. I think there were times when the Russians imagined that Moldova was like friendly territory for them, but I think that's pretty much finished. Transnistria, so why do they need Transnistria? But at the same time, they're not going to let go. You know, what are they going to give Moldova a gift and say, go, enjoy, you know, be part of Europe? That's not going to happen, because it's a bargaining chip. It's an instrument that can be used in a negotiation with Europe.
We know that the European Union made Moldova more attractive to residents of Transnistria by finding this mechanism for free visa travel for Moldovans in Europe. Still, this attempt hasn't made Transnistrian settlement more successful than 2 years now. Would an economic factor for trading with the European Union play a better role?
Moldova is more attractive now to people in Transnistria, but it depends on who the people are. If you're a business entrepreneur in Transnistria, which there are not so many left, because they have been having a lot of difficulties, especially in the last few years under Shevchuk, which actually I did not expect, but it's turned out he's quite bad for business. If you're such a person, then absolutely you would probably support, you might not say it publicly, but you would support resolving the conflict so that you can become part of Moldova, and through Moldova you could become part of Europe. That makes sense. You do better in your business. But if you're a pensioner, you know, retired, then you don't really care, because a Moldovan pension is not better than the Russian pension. Actually, the Russian pension is probably better, and you can have Russian citizenship and you get a Russian pension. So I don't think that the issue is that they hate Moldova and, you know, they love Russia and they just so desperately want to fight Moldova and be separate. I mean, that story is an old story. It's from a long time ago, and it was driven by a fear that Moldova was going to join Romania, which in 25 years it hasn't done. So I don't think anybody is so full of anger or hatred. They're trading with each other. They're going back and forth all the time.
If we talk about Transnistrian settlement, is the Russian peacekeeping mission itself an obstacle to a long-term resolution of Transnistrian conflict?
It was the case 13 years ago, when there was a chance to resolve the conflict via the Cossack proposal. It was the case that the biggest problem was the presence of Russian troops. I think it's still a problem, but I think it's not the biggest problem. I think the biggest problem is just a genuine dysfunction of governance and lack of democracy in the region as a whole. If the people in Transnistria wanted the Russian troops gone, it would be very hard to keep them there. They would be gone. And it would be absolutely possible to be creative and come up with a format. Let's say a multinational peacekeeping format. The Russians are part of it, but you have also, you know, for example, Germans or Poles or whatever. I mean, maybe some non-NATO countries. It doesn't matter, right? Mongolians. I mean, just, you know, come up with something which both sides could accept. That's not really the issue. The issue is that there's no one... There's no connection between those people who want to resolve the conflict for good economic and social reasons and the politicians who actually make the decisions and implement the decisions. There's no connection between those things. There's nothing the Russians need there. They have what they need, which is a bargaining chip. It's leverage. It's an instrument. As I said, Moldova is an instrument, Transnistria is an instrument, Donbass is an instrument. They don't need to use force. They have what they need.
The success story of Moldova becoming a country that has a leading role towards integration of European Union remains now the poorest country of Europe, involved in corruption schemes with Russian banks and offshore companies. What should be the next agenda for the Moldovan government to further succeed?
Moldova has to go a long way now to rebuild the confidence of ordinary people in the country, but also to maintain enthusiasm from Europe. Remember that 4 or 5 years ago, Europe thought about Moldova as a big success story. Nobody in Europe would call it a success story now. So it's going to take some time. Moldova, in some ways, is trying to escape the situation which Ukraine has been in for the last 25 years, which is that whenever Ukraine has something that looks like democracy, what it actually has is just one oligarch is backing the opposition and the other oligarch is backing the government, right? Or in Ukraine's case, usually it's 3 or 4 oligarchs. In Moldova, it's 2 oligarchs. So I think Moldova has a chance to get away from that model because there has been so much public criticism of this absurd criminal system. On the other hand, look who's running the government today.